Let me start, as is customary in academic circles, with a trigger warning. And I ask you not to believe or attribute to me what I'm about to say. I'm that scared. Black lives don't matter. I won't sit next to blacks. Slavery was a good system. My test for anti-Semitism has been for a long time: if you substitute the word Jew by black, then you get it. Any such pronouncement as I've just made by an academic or a student would result with them being thrown off campus by nightfall. And yet if you slip in the word Jew instead of black, this is being said all the time without even a raised eyebrow. Far worse, it's being accompanied by physical violence, hateful media, and social exclusion in our universities right now. It isn't a result of the Gaza invasion, because the roots of this attitude go back far more, as I hope to tell you. But Gaza has made it acceptable, even a badge of being progressive, for people who don't know what the river and the sea refer to, and maybe have never met a Jew in their lives. It must not be tolerated in our universities any more than the sentiments I voiced earlier would be, or indeed comparable statements about, say, gay people. It ought not to need banning because we have ample laws about hate speech and harassment, and there is no license in the Equality Act to spew hatred or racial incitement. That it is tolerated is a blow to the very nature of our universities, because where it is tolerated and not called out, the university is no longer a forum for debate and learning at the highest level, for seeking after truth and carrying out research. It's turning itself, where it's tolerated, into a cesspit of low-quality mob rule and money grabbing, sometimes from students who ought not to be in higher education at all, but ought to be educated at a lower level, which they clearly haven't yet attained, before being let loose on campuses. One instance, you may know, the case of David Miller in Bristol, who hurled anti-Zionist insults at his students, was eventually fired by the university. He's been to a tribunal where he's argued successfully that being anti-Zionist is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. Well, if it is, then so is Zionism. In theory, anti-Semitism and Gaza ought not to be vital parts of everyday university life at all. But they've morphed into that terrible virus: academic boycotts, suppression of free speech, denial of the truth, discrimination against students. There's nothing comparable in our university's treatment of Chinese, Saudi Arabian, Russian, Sudanese, Iranian students, to name but a few, whose governments have murdered and terrorized their own populations for decades. There's no anti-Pakistan movement, if you think about the origins of Pakistan in the same year as Israel. This is why the reliance on Gaza as an excuse for anti-Semitism is false. It's discriminatory. It's not a studied reaction to world events other than those relating to Israel. Worse than that, the authorities are betraying their own mission. Take the heartbreaking example of my own university, Oxford. The Vice-Chancellor's office puts out word salad statements about combating racism, but the authorities haven't handled any of the complaints made to them about the terrible incidents there, or if they have, they're keeping quiet about it, and justice hidden is justice denied. Jewish students at Oxford have spent a year compiling incidents, asking for help, while the university remains silent. The Vice-Chancellor, in her hour-long oration marking the opening of the academic year, couldn't find the space to refer to the most searing events of last year, the encampments, and the hounding of Jewish and Israeli students. What's the remedy? Holocaust education has been a total failure, except in remembrance, because it places Jew hatred in the past at the feet of another nation and all over and done with. All it's done is to alert students who've taken those courses that if they want to upset Jewish students, a swastika or mention of Nazism does the trick. And I wonder, too, what sort of religious teaching those students got when they were at primary and secondary school. I remember what I was taught at my Church of England primary school endlessly, week after week. The Jews killed Jesus. And I think that sentiment is buried deep in people of my generation. I don't know if it still goes on. We need a university complaints and harassment system that specifies anti-Jewish behavior, that offers anonymity to complainants, that accepts the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. I so agree with David, that does not allow the word Zionist to cloak Jew hatred. And we need courses of lectures, holistic courses on Jewish life and history. Never again is meaningless while our universities and this government take steps against Israel's defense, fail to stand up to Iran, and while the United Nations remains the useless forum for Israel hatred, which is all it now serves.